This meeting is called to order. We'll begin the evening with public comment. Is anybody that wishes to speak? Public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to updates from council if there are any. No updates from council. Moving on to the consent agenda. Are there any questions, comments, concerns ahead of time? Oh, sure.
Good evening, everybody. I just wanted to be here tonight to just say a quick word about my consent items. I'll be away at a conference next week. What you'll be doing is setting a public hearing for March on a conditional zoning application. I went ahead and put most of the packet material in there this month so you can get an advance look at it, but it'll all be in your packet again next month as well. This is going to involve a request to conditionally zone a portion of a property that's on Highway 25. It's addressed as 49 Overton Place. It's an odd little request involving changing a 4-lot mobile home park. It's really tucked off the highway that you can't really see too well from the road, but they want to, instead of having it be a mobile home park, change it to a 4-lot campground so that they can have RVs on the mobile home lots. There was no way to allow it to change use since the campground use was clearly broken out as its own use, so hence the request that came. It went to planning board last month. It did get recommended for approval, but I just wanted to give a quick overview of it, see if you have any initial questions that I would need to come back in March with, but I'll be back to give a broader overview early March at the agenda meeting, and then we'll hold a public hearing on the 13th.
Okay.
Have you heard anything from the neighbors?
I have not.
Or do you even know they know?
Well, I sent advance courtesy notices ahead of the planning board, did not get a single phone call, and we didn't have anyone in attendance here to speak on it. Notices will go out again ahead of the public hearing in March.
I know the back part says Nancy Price right there, and said in the paperwork, that's their parents.
Yeah, actually, she listed on the property as well.
I'm not sure, Jacques and Julia Fogel are the applicants. Julia Fogel is the daughter of Nancy Price, who lives abutting at the rear.
I think I visited this, I think it was just a few months ago. And before, he gave me some history on it. And it used to have some mobile homes there, and there were always issues with the mobile homes.
Yeah, that's what it sounded
He
like.
also told me that he had spoken with his mother-in-law and some of the neighbors, and they didn't, it would actually be an upgrade to do what he would like to do.
It sounds like it, based on the experiences he's dealt with some of the longer-term tenants on the site, yeah.
But the sites were really nice. I don't know if you've walked back there.
I have not been back there in a good number of years.
Lots of leafy cypress and vegetation to where it looked really nice.
It's fairly well screened back there.
I've been back there, I don't know, since some of this vegetation's been up, at least since the mobile homes were cleared.
Do campgrounds have any special rules for noise or anything like that?
There are a couple little, and I apologize, I didn't bring my book down with me. I will go over that before March. There's a couple of specific requirements. It doesn't get into noise. That's covered ultimately by the noise ordinance that police oversee. There's some, buffer requirements, but again, they've got a little site sketch, and they've got a lot of vegetation back there. They've, I think, drawn on some additional planting that they would make back there. But most of the standards in there relate to things like density and whatnot, and this would not come anywhere near, with four lots. We're taking it through the conditional process specifically so that it is tied to the site plan, so that he couldn't say, hey, we want to come back and, do 20 lots someday, or, make it go through that one more rigorous process if it happens to get approved. So.
Well, if nothing else, I'd definitely like to know what the neighbors think of it.
And there's some consideration that was discussed about the driveways that we requested, and we'll talk to you about a possible condition that requires them to check with DOT about any required driveway improvements because of the steep grade with a sharp V-turn, going up the steep grade and concern over more frequently, in campers and whatnot going in and out of there. So that was one thing that was discussed with planning board.
Any other questions or comments?
See you next week.
Thank you, that's you.
And Mayor, before, if we're done with consent, that item on the resolution, the new lease for the concession building, we did raise the rent a little bit on there, some 400 to 450, and that was, Roy Dickerson was comfortable with that. It's the same amount of time to lease concessions from April through August, so 5 months, rent went up a little bit from 400 to 450.
I'm glad that partnership sounds like it's going to be back in place. It's
Yeah.
going to be successful for both parties.
Yes.
You have any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 4, presentation of the year-end tax collector's report. Madam Tax Collector, the floor is yours.
It is mine. And I left you the report. It should be there.
Yep.
There's also a printout. That printout that I attached, that is strictly for 2022. And it is as of today. So there's like 11,000 and something that we've collected since January the 31st until today. So our report is strictly through January the 31st. So the 2022 taxes, that number, that 4.4, that is what we actually got from Henderson County billing scrolls that they sent to us and we billed out in August. Discoveries, that is going to include utility billing that comes from NCDOR, Department of Revenue. They give those values, so we have to look at those as discovery because they're billed after we do our initial billing. There were some discoveries that we got from Henderson County, not as much in the past. The releases that you have there, that is the releases that y'all have approved since July to the end of January. And then the collections, that's the money that we have gotten monthly, daily, weekly, since July for 2022. So unpaid taxes at this time is $85,414.76 as the end of January. It's like a 99% collection rate right now. And I'm going to ask that March the 22nd is when we're going to do our advertisement, and we're going to keep that at $5. We're just going to do it through the Hendersonville Lightning. That's about it.
Any other questions, comments? Sounds good to me.
I did notice one on here, how I looked at that one, but it's listed on here as zeros all the way across.
So on our system, on our May system that we have, you'll see that 0 on there, and it may be that they have a prior year,
Oh,
but
okay.
it doesn't show
So
for
it doesn't
2000.
show what they still owe the town, gotcha.
Yes. Yeah. But most of those are all for 2022.
Some of these, the folks like I used to use national outfitters, they moved out of our district. Some businesses left, I guess.
But if they were there on January the 1st
Okay.
of 2022, they are required to pay us.
Okay.
Yeah, these were, they were totally due on December 31st?
These taxes are the ones that were due September 1st, but were delinquent January 6th. But,
So they're all collecting penalties at this point?
oh yeah, the 2% penalties are on there, and then February's interest is on there.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I don't think so. We thank you for all your
Thank
work.
you.
Thanks, Candy.
Moving on to item number 5, the public hearing to consider the economic incentives for Project Expo. Next week, Rick will be here, and we'll hold that public hearing. Do you have anything ahead of time for that, Mark?
No, it's been advertised. You've got a copy of the notice of the ad in your packet. I mean, she'll go into a little bit more, but, you know, good capital investment, if they, do wind up, coming and landing here. Over 35 million in capital investment, 2 million meal improvements, 33.7 million in machinery and equipment, 92 jobs, and then there's a listing of the potential amount of incentives that would have to be paid out at just over 352,000 over a 5-year period. And that's if they hit their milestones or hit their requirements for capital investment and jobs creation.
I was reading an article, I think it was for the Pratt & Whitney plant. They were talking about that, now this may not be, it may be somebody else, but anyway, there was somebody like that, they were talking about that wasn't gonna meet their standard. But if they didn't meet the standards, they got tax breaks on the percentage that they did meet. We don't do that, do we?
It depends on the agreement. I don't know what they set up, but typically,
It's like if they had 75% of the jobs, they got 75% of the tax break.
yeah, it might have been a dissent. Normally ours are not set
Yeah,
like that. They have to hit the minimum capital investment by a certain date, and then they, depending on how the jobs have to be created, like let's say half have to be in the first 2 years or first year, and then the other half in the remaining 3 years, something like that. If they don't create it and maintain it, they can't request an incentive payment for that year. And a lot of times, they don't hit it exactly, and so they don't ask for it. Sometimes they do.
Yeah.
So,
Sometimes they hit it, still don't ask for it.
yeah, it's happened, yeah.
Do you have any other questions, comments on that item? Seeing none, moving on to item number 6, the discussion of a new contract for curbside management for recycling. Mr. Manager.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, Council. You've got in your packet a memo here that kind of highlights some of the proposed changes under a new agreement with curbside management. Last month I talked to you about, we did a cost analysis of bringing it in-house versus contracting out and looking at potential cost increase under an increase in the household fee, and it was more advantageous to try and renegotiate a new agreement. So staff, we met with Barry Lawson from Curbside Management. I went through the contract and tried to highlight some suggested, and the language is in there where it's highlighted in yellow, and there's a copy of the contract here. Some enhancements to the contract. The first thing that's updated, it's not necessarily an enhancement, but it's really an update, is what they accept as recyclable materials. So that's highlighted in your draft of the agreement. I reference the sections in this memo. It's under A3 and E1. So that needed to be updated, and it's pretty close to what we had before. It's definitely not a reduction in the types of materials, if anything, an enhancement. So that seemed to be fine, but I mean, look through that, and if you have any issues with it, let me know. And I did share this draft back with the owner of Curbside Management, Mr. Lawson, and he was comfortable with the suggested changes. Of course, we met and talked about that before I sent this to him. The next thing was the monthly household fee, which is probably maybe the most substantive thing in here. I did talk to you about that it would have to go up substantially, and that was really to deal with inflationary issues, which we're all dealing with, and their company as well, keeping staff, which have done a decent job of it, but they like to keep a consistency of drivers, because obviously that helps in the quality of service. But he had talked about a fee range from $4.20 to $4.25. We requested $4.20. He was amenable to that. So, and that's still a good competitive rate. I mean, their reports, and it backs it up, we're looking at, I mentioned it in the last staff report, was anywhere from average costs in other places, $437 to $450 something, as a range. So this is still below that. There'll still be an inflationary factor per year. It's based on consumer price index. If that's going up, then that percentage increase, it gets factored into any increase in the household fee. But when you do that percentage times the new rate per household, it's not that much per year. It's fairly nominal unless we have really huge increases in CPI. So that was the other thing, and that's updated in the agreement. This was something, the next thing, promotion of curbside recycling. So we really wanted to get them to continue to partner with us to encourage the public as much as possible to participate in recycling. Some people do a great job. They separate as much as they can, put it in the container. Some people don't participate at all. So some enhancements or language that they give us more information for information we can put on the website to encourage people to recycle. Probably more social media helps, so some additional information. Heather helps primarily with our Facebook social media posts, things on there to encourage recycling. Then going to the schools and speaking at schools, you get the kids excited about it, and that'll encourage or pester parents to do that. So there was some enhancements in language in there along those lines. And then the last thing was collection requirements, and that was in section E5. And I just, based on some common complaints that we've received about, they leave the cart lid open, and if it's raining and you got stuff in there, that's a real pain, and they have to clean it out. And they've done it so they can remember, but I talked to them about it and said, we prefer they shut the lid when they're done. Our folks do.
I did notice last time I picked up the bins, it was closed.
Good. Well, the only Barry, they probably started doing it already, you can talk to them about it. So we just specifically put that language in the agreement. So those are some of the enhancements. It would be another 5-year agreement. It would take effect in April. You could take action to approve it at the meeting next week. But those are some of the enhancements, and and they've been good partners. They're not perfect. People are going to call and let us know if they've missed. Sometimes it's not that they've missed their house; they've put it out late. Once the truck's already gone by, they might start putting cameras on theirs as well, like our Public Works has done. So they'll, mention, I'll check the camera, and sometimes, oh, well, maybe I didn't get it out there. If they check it and see that it wasn't there when they went by, but, so, I don't know if there's any questions or comments.
Does everybody feel pretty comfortable? There be any objections, let's move into consent agenda for next week.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, moving on to item number 7, report on draft performance measures. Mr. Manager,
Thank you. As promised, I've been talking to you for some time about working on some draft performance measures, benchmarking, looking at our key services, and I'm doing a lot of research on this. One of the things I wanted to do is try and this is what a lot of advice out there is, start small and don't try and go too aggressive on this because, number one, you have a difficult time being successful, but you overwhelm staff too on this, and that can become discouraging. So what I did, and one of the key things I did in reviewing other information, one material in particular, a benchmarking book that kind of the guru on performance measures, benchmarking from the school government had put together. And I took items from there and tried to then apply it to kind of key services or activities that we're involved in. You can go really far with this stuff, and I mean, this is a start. It's a little basic level here. And so I took that and I tried to apply some measures based on these kind of core services and some of our activities. And I've met with staff to, first of all, share the information, but also have them look at it and get feedback on it. And so far that's gone okay. You know, there's always some trepidation on this, and understandably so, when you get into this, that, you know, is it something you can do and be successful? And you have to make tweaks on this too. It's a constantly evolving thing. But what I'd like to do, and you got a copy of all of it, if you want me to talk about any of them in here, I can, is I'm having follow-ups with staff then to kind of further refine this, and then at that point start measuring the information. And I could do a follow-up with kind of what the final set is here after some massaging of this a little bit further. And the only thing that looked a little different in here was, if you go to the end of it, our police chief really wanted to take a shot at this on his own. These were ones that, everything else was ones that I suggested, but I want to refine with staff. And so he has quite a bit, and it's pretty aggressive as far, or ambitious, I should say. And I really think it needs to be kind of scaled back a little bit. And so him and I are meeting to do that, and then I'll provide a kind of revised list of this so y'all can see that, make sure it's something you're comfortable. But, you know, considering they're not fully staffed, and he's still working on general orders, he's almost done with that, and updating the general orders for his policies. I think something a little bit more condensed and kind of a little bit more lower hanging fruit, but still ambitious, would be better, so it's not kind of overwhelming.
Although a lot of the things that he has in his are items that are relatively easy to keep track of. But that's what I was going to say about these other ones. I think it's really important at this point to look at each performance measure and clearly spell out who's going to do the measure and when they're going to do it. Because otherwise you get to the end of the year and everybody will say, well, I didn't know I was supposed to do that.
That's true, and that's kind of the next little challenge here is tracking it. Some of it's not hard to track, and then some of the others that are a little bit more involved is going to take more diligence and record keeping and, you know, a format to put the data in. But no, that's a good point.
I like that most of them are time bound. They said, for example, within X amount of time, I guess is the recommendation for these.
Yeah, yes,
okay.
yeah. When I was looking at some comparisons,
Yeah.
and some of these are like, you know, they're higher level standard to shoot for and respond. Basically, a lot of most of what we do it's services, so it's trying to timely response or fewer mistakes, you know, rectifying things, that kind of stuff.
Well, I think I mentioned to, I think it might be beneficial once this gets off the ground, whenever that is, to maybe publish it on the website or have part of the budget. I think other municipalities or local governments have done that.
Yeah.
It might be helpful for the public to see, to help them get a better idea about the decision making that we're doing on council. I think by seeing some of this data.
Yeah. Okay, good point.
Do you have any other questions, comments?
I'm not really sure that on the performance measure for Parks and Rec, percentage of residents who participated in recreation programming offered by the town. You know, I'm a little bit leery of that type of performance measure because you can have
grant.
So you can't really do anything about your community's lack of participation.
Well, if you look at the way they wrote it, they just said they're gonna measure the percentage.
Yeah.
They didn't shoot for any level,
Yeah, we didn't put a.
so there's no high or low or anything like that.
Yeah, we didn't put a, I think we should track it, and they do track it in some programs, because it's a lower rate, it's not that hard to find.
Foundation or
Yeah, but it would be interesting to know, and, but no, I see your point, it's very valid.
You
We
live on a
want, we want
performance
to,
measure, it's like, that's kind of,
we want, obviously, we want a quality program that
right.
people are going to enjoy, that's well run. Whether it's, mostly Fletcher residents or people in the area, and, some combination of Fletcher residents and non-residents, so that, but to track, what percentage is, our people in town that are using it was the point. Parks and Rec was a little bit harder, at least some of the suggestions in that one book I was using, I didn't think were as creative maybe as could be. I've actually got our Parks and Rec director and the program supervisor, Greg and Josh, doing an online class in school government that's designed specifically for Parks and Recreation performance measurement. So I think probably get some better ideas and some starting points. Like the percentage of facilities or the amount of acreage per thousand. That's a nice thing.
But they don't really control that. We do.
No, they don't, but we'll be, that's true, but we're keeping, that can also be the ones encouraging, hey, we need more park
Yeah.
facility because of, or we pull the grade, we're actually above the average for that right now, at least as compared to some other places, but that one was a little bit harder to come up with, to measure, at least starting measures.
Any other questions, comments? Well, we thank you and department heads and all the staff for working on that. I know that's very burdensome. Thank you.
And really, and again, to go back and why we doing this, two things to try and strive for, good service, high performance in what we're doing. But the other thing is to look at this strategically or critically as far as what can we do better. As you get into, if you get into it, getting more, then it gets you thinking, well, I didn't think of, we could approach it this way and make some adjustment that makes it maybe more efficient or easier to do and still gets it at a high level. So it's kind of that just critical thinking, self-evaluation on it too.
I think everybody finds some beneficial use of this council, staff, and the public, I think so.
That's the hope.
It's
Yeah.
good.
I noticed a lot of them for the police department talk about the success indicators tied to the biennial survey. What biennial survey?
When I was starting this and talking to the chief, that POCO survey, our citizen survey, there's some public safety. It doesn't exactly sync up, and we may be able to tweak some of the questions in there, but that's the reference.
Biennial, what, every 2 years?
2 years.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
But what if they don't do it?
well, it'll be hard for us to compare that. I know some of the discussion, I know it's up to council if you all want to do this on a regular basis, but was to do that, maybe every 2 years it could be every 3 years, just to, how we doing comparatively?
Right.
So.
It all makes sense. Move on to item number 8, update on proposed mitigation improvements affecting the town center project. Mr. Manager.
Okay. So you heard and I can go over some of this on the projector there on our AV system. So we met with DOT a week ago, Friday on the 27th, to kind of go over what was their reaction to this last version of the traffic impact analysis, which you heard a report from James Boso about that. And so we wanted to see, did they have some, potentially preliminary recommendations or recommendations? They probably, we anticipated they wouldn't have like these, okay, we've read it and these are the mitigation improvements, but they did have a list of what may wind up being their recommendations. And it wasn't too bad. At least I thought, well, still some challenging stuff in there, but at least the reaction I know from the civil engineer, Will Bowie, who was working for the developer, was he didn't think they were too overly burdensome. So you've got a report here, and I can run through it, and if you'd like, I can, kind of show some of the areas up on the projector. But basically, you've got, they came back at it, DOT, with kind of two thought processes here. And the one was, most of the trips that are generated by this project, they're calculating is coming from the convenience store gas station element of it at the south end of the project area. So they came back with suggested mitigation improvements that if you didn't do that, this is what we're recommending. If you did and kept that in, this is what we're recommending. You can see the two different distinctions. And then the last thing was if we're going to extend the old King Creek Road, some commitment from council, whether it's by motion, they probably want a resolution that we, not a specific amount of area for the right-of-way, but make a commitment that we would dedicate right-of-way to connect an extension of Old King Creek Road down to Howard Gap at some point. And you can see that in here. And if you want, I can kind of run through on the map.
That might be helpful.
If that's, yeah.
I noticed where they put a big electrical device in, right where the train lane would be on Fanning Bridge, though. You seen that?
No, I didn't know.
Coming through last week, there's 3 big, huge electrical boxes there where it would be a train lane. There's 50 grand in that.
So, looking at the memo, kind of first several things are good news on this. We talked about bringing some of those intersections off that were just were way too outlined on this, and those were, Library Road and 25, where King Creek comes into that, Wood Hill and 25, and Wood Hill's the entrance to South J, south of Hendersonville Road, and then the Old King Creek and East Fanning Bridge, which is our intersection right here as you come up to Town Hall. And I don't know why they put King Creek Road and Old King Creek Road. That was never under discussion down there, but anyways, those were some areas that were off, so that was good. Then, getting into this with the convenience store gas station element or not, if we took it out, what they suggested then was, first off, that Fanning Bridge Road and US 25 be reconfigured here for a through left and through left and right turn lane added for US 25 southbound. So that would be coming east. So I'm just going to roll the cursor here. So coming up to that Fanning Bridge and 25 intersection going east, what they're saying there is that be reconfigured for that through and left, and then adding a right turn lane here that would go kind of up in front of where that, where I always get landmark where Dave Gilbert's insurance
Right.
building used to be. And it comes over a little bit here onto the project, the auction house project at Food Hall. And they're aware of it, and we've had conversations, Eric and I have, with a representative of Magnolia Properties who's doing that whole project down here for the Food Hall. So that's one thing, if the convenience store gas station part was out. So that improvement, which we kind of figured that one definitely was going to stay in regardless. The next thing was, so East Fanning Bridge Road westbound, so that's on the other side here, heading west, to be restriped for a dedicated left turn lane, which it already has one, but then I think if I'm reading this right, I'm going to get some clarification from the district engineer. Then the other lane there, you could go left as well, so I guess on this other side, left as well, through or right, which is, you can do all those except you can't go left in that other lane right there. So that is one part. That's not a big deal, unless they need more right-of-way, and I think they can do that without additional right-of-way. We control the right-of-way because we still own the property on that south side of that East Fanning Bridge. Then the next couple of things were stuff that were not really a big deal on this, so to speak. The others were that Depot Street, which is right in the center of their project. It would have to be right in, so right in and right out. And then they want to put a concrete median island out here, and that's to stop people, I guess, going right out and trying to turn left. So that was another part. And then the 25 at Howard Gap, finalizing the signal phasing, so that's just this down. It's going to go down to Howard Gap here in 25. So redoing the signal phasing there, that was another part of it. And then the street down there, that's part of the project. So we know they're going to build a street, or they would build a street along the kind of rear of the property here that runs north-south. So that, and they're calling it Johnston. I don't know if that was the old name of the street that was there once upon a time. That would be right in and right out as well, from out onto Howard Gap and from Howard Gap onto that road. And then they also mentioned that the concrete median portion that would, I guess, be somewhere right out here to stop people from trying to turn left out of Johnston. So that was essentially the improvements. Several of these are things that the developer was going to do relative to the property itself, and everything else was kind of confined to up here at the intersection, really improvements from Fanning Bridge Road heading east, and then Fanning Bridge Road heading west. And those weren't too, difficult to do on their own or super costly to do. Probably the biggest one would be getting the additional right-of-way here for the right turn lane. And then and this was the condition if the convenience store gas station was out, if it was kept in, which is what we agreed to in the development agreement with them. Basically, a slight deviation from that, the East Fanning Bridge Road, the westbound onto 25, that one then having a right turn lane, so they want to have something dedicated there. So I don't know if we have to shift the road over, use some of our right of way, or possibly they get some here, which there is some room next to the stereo business. So that was that right turn lane there. Let's see. And then Howard Gap Road, have a right turn lane, yield slip lane going onto US 25 northbound. So that's back
And then the last thing was about the Old Cane Creek Road extension, which is kind of my next discussion point with you. If you were to construct that and have that connect down to Howard Gap, they say as far from the railroad grade crossing as possible. But, so those were the improvements that looks like that's going to come back as their recommendations here based on the latest iteration or version of the traffic impact analysis. So not too terribly onerous to do. Of course, what kind of contribution from the developer that would be required would be the kicker on it, and that we're comfortable with it. So I don't know if you want to talk about it, we can talk more next week, and you don't have to make a decision right now, but I think kind of the next step would be, if you're comfortable dedicating right away, or something to indicate you would in the future dedicate right away to extend Old King Creek Road down to Howard Gap, some connection, that would, I think, satisfy everything if you kept the project as is.
But then we have to deal with what do we do with all the equipment that's in the building? And that means that we are paying for the development instead of the development.
And this is something to keep in mind. So, we're trying to develop the other 40 acres around here. And it's frequently been a discussion point to have another access into the property, likely from Howard Gap Road, which would then likely be a road that would be extended to connect with Old King Creek. So if you do that, the green building, we went through the whole thing, we're trying to bid and move, and we were going to move it down next to Public Works. You might want to look at this, it's a bigger picture item, but it also gives, it does several things. If we relocated Public Works and that Parks and Rec maintenance function that's really from the old green building to another location like the Meritor property, for example, you could build, have enough space to consolidate that whole function, and then it frees up additional room for development on the property. So that's something to think about. You could do the connection and keep Public Works there. I think at a minimum, you probably want to take that green building down though and find, another location for Parks and Rec maintenance. I mean, that building's been, not the best conditioned building for some time.
Well, I know that, but that's a huge expense that's going to be put on the town, particularly if we try to move Public Works.
I mean, you could probably guess around both of those, because once you lose the green building, you lose that grandfather right away with the railroad. And that's what the submission was asking for, asking. And basically lose the property card. The building's already existing, if you can find a way to reuse it in the future. So
there's also a possibility on the right of way is approaching, it used to be Norfolk Southern, now it's Blue Ridge Southern Railway or LOPCO, about, an encroachment agreement to come across, because that's what the developer is going to do on the other side, is work on an encroachment agreement to use some of their right of way. Because it's a lot that's not used, that goes out, it's like 100 foot on each side. So, there may be a way to slightly adjust the road too, and, I don't know, miss that green building, but miss the railroad right away if you took down the green building.
and another concern, if you had a straight shot, people speeding out there, another building, it's kind of concerned about some safety right there, because you got like a little slow S and slow down, keeps traffic down.
There might be some, I'm sure there's some type of traffic calming measure we could put in there, but, yeah, in fact, we shut the gate sometimes with people coming through and coming quick. But, if we want to try and keep it as is and keep that as an element, I mean, there's a possibility it could be developed without the gas station
convenience store piece, having that road, Old King Creek, we said it would probably need to be part of the mitigation discussion. So I don't, it seemed like there was some openness to it, but, and I can come back with a resolution if you want to discuss it and consider that, maybe maybe not necessarily next week, but maybe the March meeting, if that's.
It seems like putting that convenience store in, we're the ones paying for it. We're having to relocate buildings, we're having to give away property. And I know we had talked before about doing a road, but this would force us into doing things right now, right? Wouldn't it?
Well, that's the other thing is the timing of that. We're not sure, some of these things that DOT puts on here, then they don't get funded or done for some period of time. It depends on the conditions. Like, my guess is that right turn lane from that right turn lane from Fanny Bridge on 25 is probably I'm thinking they're gonna want that sooner than later.
Okay. Needed
Because
that.
that one is needed now. That'll definitely provide some relief with traffic moving through here. But some of the stuff like the road back here, if you extended Old King Creek, that it might give us more time to work on that because we'd have to get a more ideal kind of set of design idea. I know one of the DOT officials there, you're just kind of spitballing it, but was, do you extend the road, and there's a connection, a circle around about the apartment complex that could go there and out. They might not be amenable to it, but it
It's
brings
a gated community, how are you gonna do that?
Pardon me?
It's a gated community, how are you gonna do that?
They get it and come back around on the certain side. If it's a convenience to the residents there, maybe that's a sell on it.
I tell you what, another thing that I'm worried about, no one has provided me an explanation that makes any sense whatsoever as to how we can extend Old King Creek Road and not cause mayhem tapping into Howard Gap Road, right there at the intersection of 25. I just don't see it.
Yeah. Well,
Possibly the road that they're talking about inside the development, they could possibly make that work by having the cars actually stop past where the intersection is. But you can't do that at the other place.
well, if it's built as planned, you'll probably get some people, because they have to get, some of them are coming up to the intersection to go
North.
Yeah, to go north and come up to Fanning Bridge Road and turn right and come back down here. So you probably get some people turning right into Johnston, which then takes pressure off of the traffic stack.
I mean, the ones that I'm worried about are the ones that are heading south on Old King Creek Road, but they want to go south on 25.
Mhm.
How are you going to cross all those lanes of traffic and be able to do that?
There's not a lot of lanes of traffic. I mean, it's one, you come up there and then you're in the left. I mean, it comes pretty quick there, the split. In the peak times, it wouldn't be ideal. The other times, it does move traffic. It would move traffic through there.
And I think what you'll have is you'll have people pulling out to get in that left turn lane, but still blocking the other lane, so people going west on Howard Gap couldn't get to the right turn lane.
That's.
I just don't see a reasonable way to do it.
That's why the further south till you go on Howard Gap to the connection, the better that is. So you don't have some that's, you know,
And it took off 1,000-foot one down there, yeah, for the school.
yes, yeah. So what came off, that was the biggest one, there's a couple of things. I'm sorry, this keeps zooming so much here. If you, so the two, I'm moving the cursor, the two left lanes, that was going southbound down 25 here, so adding a left turn lane, and then 1,000 feet of an additional receiving lane, that came off. And then the other thing that came off was, they talked about a right turn lane here, going north on 25, and then to go on eastbound Fanning Bridge, which, cuts in front of the clock tower, which would be challenging or a problem. So that came off, the right turn lane up here, and then that additional left turn lane and 1,000 feet of receiving lane on Howard Gap. I mean, the other improvements aren't that challenging. Probably and I know it's the biggest undetermined, if you did the old King Creek or agreed to establish some dedication right away for the extension of Old King Creek, that's an undetermined, where it's going to go, how it's going to align.
I think it might be helpful to do the traffic resolution for next month.
Yeah.
Maybe we can see that, but it sounds like we're not exactly sure where we want to go. I'm hearing everything correctly.
Yeah,
I think that's important.
and I confer with DOT too, is how much specificity do they need on this, and how much, time do we get if we did this? Because, if we're rushed into it, or if we have a really short window to get it done, I understandably would be more reluctant to do it. But again, it benefits our overall bigger project to have another entrance in from Howard Gap under the property.
I agree with, I agree with what you just said. What's going to run through my head is putting the rest of this acreage in jeopardy further down the line if they're not, I guess, doing this now.
Yeah.
Like, we're better turn.
And if you ever,
Maybe that's not necessarily true either.
and if we ever relocated Public Works and Parks and Rec maintenance, we could do that more efficiently on one site, metal building. We wouldn't have to do all the aesthetic stuff that we were looking at with design guidelines when we were trying to move a Parks and Rec maintenance building and put it next to Public Works, and then the bids were just much higher than anticipated for that. Anything else?
Everything else?
If we put it over on Meritor, it's out of the downtown district, so we could put in a much cheaper building, correct?
Yeah, you can do, still not decently, but you can do a metal building with storage or bays for maintenance of vehicles, a little bit of office space in there, and then also a little bit more room for parking vehicles that maybe you put outside the shed, similar to what we're doing right now.
How much harder would that be for Public Works to work out of something over there versus over here? Because here they can drive equipment to the park and to the creek and places.
Yeah, the biggest downside, Public Works, they can cut across with some of their equipment, is trailering lawnmower equipment.
Yeah.
Right now, they're riding mowers over to, right from the building over, cut through that path and into they still got trailer equipment over at Kate's Park to do the mowing over there, but they'd have to trailer it. They used to do that
Yeah.
years ago, even in the same location, but now they're riding the mowers over. That's the biggest downside. It's a little bit a ways away, but Public Works and their main functions could leave that site and get out. it's still a fairly central location for town.
Anything else on this item? Sounds like we have a lot to think about.
Yeah.
Moving on to, I don't know, yeah, thank you, Mark. We're on item number 9, the discussion on unassigned fund balance, excess reserve.
Yeah, it's actually Heather's
Yeah,
comment,
that's
I
right.
should have had her name on there, and I apologize.
Yeah, now this is the manager, for you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Back in 2017, Town Council approved a fund balance policy that outlined the need for prudent level of financial reserves to guard its citizens against service disruption in the event of unexpected temporary revenue shortfalls or unpredicted one-time expenditures. The policy outlined we had to have a minimum unassigned fund balance of 45%, but no more than 65%. So when we had our audit done, and they kind of presented in December, the numbers were finalized, and our unassigned fund balance at the end of fiscal year 21-22 was $5,774,110, which is 74% of our total general fund expenditures of $7,780,298, which is above our 65% excess policy. So to get it back down to the 65%, it's about $720,000. And so per policy, there were 4 things that council could consider. One-time expenditures that do not increase recurring operating costs and cannot be funded through current revenues. Emphasis will be on one-time uses that reduce future operating costs. Or 2, startup expenditures for new programs provided that such action is approved by the town council as is considered in the context of multi-year projections of revenue and expenditures as prepared by the town manager or finance director. Or 3, appropriated to lower the amount of outstanding principal on existing debt. Or 4, lowering the property tax rate. So after reviewing these options, my suggestion would be to apply the $720,000 to outstanding principal on one of our 2 USDA loans. So our largest USDA loan is a $5 million loan at 4.125%. So if we were to take the $720,000 and add it to our April monthly payment, the town would save $901,853 in interest and would shorten our payments by 74 monthly payments or 6 years and 2 months. So that would be my suggestion, but it's totally up to you. So if you were in favor, prepare a budget amendment at the March agenda to appropriate $720,000 to go to debt service. Any questions?
So if we did that, then that would free up more money for capital improvements for other things, right?
Yeah, well, our payments will stay the same, it's just shortening our years.
Okay.
Yeah, so we cut it about, 6 years and 2 months, and
Yeah.
about $901,000 in interest.
I will support your suggestion. Are we all comfortable with her suggestion? Do you have anything else in mind?
Does,
Go ahead.
No, it's just, y'all weighing in on it. I we just thought that was your biggest bang for your buck and doesn't have any impacts on operating costs.
What are we gonna say? Well,
how are interest rates right now? In other words, if in a year we decide we want to build a new public works, are we going to pay a lot more than 4% interest?
Possibly. I mean, the rates are rising, I don't foresee them, I think the Fed's going to do another interest rate hike here shortly. So, again, that's just the game. Now, I will say that you guys decided to use the ARPA money over the salaries, which I think you were going to earmark for future capital projects, which is like $2.6 million. So again, that will give you some future planning for some capital projects coming down the road. So, I don't know if I would necessarily say do this if we weren't going to do that this month.
Yeah.
What interest does it make now? Does it make hardly?
It's finally starting to grow, our interest is starting to grow finally.
But what's the percentage of money sitting where it's at?
I have to run the numbers on it off the top of my head. I don't forget, so.
You mean the percentage, what's the interest
What
rate on the
money's-
current loan that we pay principal down on?
No. The fund, the general fund.
Yeah, I would have to pull my interest rates and see what bank statements, so. But our capital management trust is our larger savings account, which gets lots more interest. So.
some more time to think about it, what our options.
With the upcoming, evaluation on your property tax, I don't know, was that for like the future for our folks too? Was that, but one meeting is probably jumped up tremendously.
So what big time?
Yeah, and I don't know if we, yes, we could say the actual taxpayers, I mean, about the town, it's like almost $1 million, 901. But with, I'm just speaking out loud, with offsetting some burden on that huge tax increase to our citizens, would that be beneficial as well? So I don't know.
Certainly, and that'd be something if we want to discuss during our March budget meeting as we go through the process. We don't have to move on this right now. It's just, I want to give you the report for policy and I have to give you my suggestions, so.
I want to think anytime paid on debt, it's a good situation, but, I know that I would like to consider something like revenue neutral, when we're in our budget meeting, and I'm just trying to figure out in my head, in order to pull that off, how would that affect anything that we're sitting on now, if it does?
I guess in the March meeting, we should have no commercial with taxes will look like.
Hopefully, I believe all the residents should be getting their notification sometime in February. So hopefully we'll be getting some information from Darlene with some beginning numbers of what our new assessed values are going to look like.
Can I give us a bigger picture of what?
Yeah. Our tax assessor needs to get us some values and then give it, I mean, traditionally, they'll say, okay, for Fletcher or for Flat Rock and the different areas, this is about the percentage increase we're looking at in values. And, well, they should have the actual value increase in there with that percentage. And then we can start looking at, see, then what we have to do, we have to distinguish in there when they do that, is how much is new tax, like new construction, like new values that you normally deal with every year when we're trying to determine what our tax base is, versus how much is the increase in existing value. Because we have to take out the new construction stuff and then look at what the increase in values from reval is to determine what revenue neutral is, if we adjusted the rate down to whatever amount. So you do this little formula on it, and it's not perfectly clean. I mean, even if hypothetically you went to revenue neutral, you may still have someone's tax bill went up a little bit, or you do something in between, or you don't, but we gotta get numbers so we can tell you what the tax levy is, and then what revenue neutral will be.
I figure everybody's taxes will be going up, just how far?
Yeah, well, and remember, it's your values going up, then it depends on where you set the rate.
So does revenue neutral ignore inflation? Are you saying revenue neutral, keep it the same as it was before?
Inflation is not, I mean, maybe inflation is factored into how they revalue what the new value is, but it's not factored into revenue neutral. The revenue neutral calculation is just simply based on how much your base values have gone up on properties, and what would you need to adjust that tax rate back to get it back to before the reval. And then we have to pull out new construction, like new values.
But to me, that sounds like you're ignoring inflation. And if you do that year after year, we're going to be digging, every year we'll be digging a deeper hole.
I mean, the simplest explanation on that, and I know this is a policy matter, the cost of doing business doesn't get cheaper.
Well, that will.
Yeah, I mean, the cost to do these services, they don't decrease, unless you can find some really unique way to approach, or you pull services back. So, yeah, sometimes tax bills go up at reval, and it's an adjustment of the market, we're all paying more for things that we receive or purchase.
So revenue neutral, I mean, basically you're reducing the rates, your collection rates, and then, I mean, like now, say if we get 7.7 million, we're still gonna get, it could be 8 million. You're not going backwards, if that makes sense. You're just kind of setting a little bit of our versus going 8 million, you don't go drop the rate, it might be 10 million. All of a sudden, we get a large amount, you know, it's gotta be a happy medium, that's what that revenue neutral does. It kind of breaks everything down, happy medium. The town still gets money, extra money, more money, and also it does not put the burden on the taxpayer, that large jump that they're going to use. They're going to get an increase, but.
But if everything is going up with inflation, like the cost of building a new building, if that goes up and we stay revenue neutral, how are we gonna handle it?
Well, we adjust the rates to what we feel that is. Still gonna go up, everything goes up inflation, like you said, but the citizens also go up inflation as well. They're paying higher taxes, they're paying higher milk and everything else. So they're trying to keep them in consideration as well, if that makes sense. But also have a win-win for everybody.
I understand that, but I mean, if indeed people's values are going up pretty rapidly, and we know they will, if they ever sell, they're gonna make a hell of a profit.
They took the appraisals and stuff like that off the sales of 2022. Now, the inflation's gonna go down. It's not going, when it was selling in 2022, it was so high, everybody knew it was so high. And that's what they're taking the rate off of. So basically, it's kind of a misleading. So in the next 4 years, I don't see them people selling that same house for this old
So
fashioned.
we want to time it so the next time they do it, we catch it at the low
But
point.
it's kind of hard to say next time, because in 4 years, it could be,
Could be worse.
You have had one of the revals since I've been here, and I think this is the fourth one now, fourth or fifth. Our net values actually decreased, and you didn't increase the rate, you kept it the same, so the town took a hit, if you will, on revenues to keep services the same level. You did that in here too. You didn't increase it to offset it, you kept it the same, so we lost on.
But if it
And
did
a lot of them
go
you
down
kept-
a lot, it'd be a problem.
Yeah, and you could look at, maybe not going completely to revenue neutral, but somewhere in the middle,
Yeah.
so it's not as big of a hit for taxpayers. And that's another consideration.
Well, maybe we ought to bring this back in March with,
Well, we could do it with the budget.
yeah, with the budget work, yeah. Is that appropriate?
Yes.
Thank you, Heather.
Yeah, so
She's got, are you the person for our next agenda item as well?
It's gonna be
That's
some
also-
water.
So moving on, item number 10, discussion of the recent results from the band classification study.
First of all, just to show it's not a paid classification study.
Yeah.
It's just a market study. So just kind of give you a highlight, a paid class study is where a consultant comes in, does questionnaires with our employees, has interviews with our employees, looks at knowledge, skills, and abilities, supervisory responsibilities, and looks at where they are in our pay grade system. This was not that. This was just a market kind of overview of our pay plan. And what the Robertson Miller Group did was they took our pay plan, took out about 13 what they call benchmark positions, sent those out to 9 of our local jurisdictions, and I believe 8 responded back to the survey. And what they did was they kind of looked at what the minimum hiring salary was to the maximum. And so Robertson Miller pulled all the data together, and about 84% of the benchmark positions were below market. We had 5 or 16% that were above market. And I noted in the memo, because I spent some time digging through, 3 of those positions were reclassed at a higher pay grade back in 2019, which was the last paying class study. And 2 of the other employees, after reviewing their job duties, skills, supervisory responsibilities, I believe they're properly graded on our pay plan. So as I worked through it and worked with Robertson Miller Group, their suggestion to move our pay plan 2.5%, and their suggestion would be do that as we implement the budget for next fiscal year. So what I did, just because I took the HR hat off and put on the accounting hat, and went through and kind of did my own review of the data, and I came up with 2.64%. So again, I think it's really close at the 2.5%. So what I did was I kind of just ran numbers so you kind of have an idea of what that would look like. For a full year, doing the 2.5%, including fringe benefits, would be around $65,400 for all budgeted positions, which is, we're currently budgeted for 39 full-time, it doesn't exclude the town manager. If the council was wanting to maybe not wait until the next fiscal year, but possibly implement it in April, I just did a quick calculation, and it looked like we would just need about a $5,000 budget amendment to implement it in April, and that would be mostly in the admin, Parks and Rec, and planning departments, because we've been pretty much fully staffed this whole year for the police and public works having advanced salary savings. So that was the basic thing. It just took me a little time to go through the data. And if you know me, and you know me in Excel, Mark said, I'll just take your word for it. I said, okay, I have the spreadsheet. So, but anyway, so the letter from Robertson Miller is in your packet. So I just wanted to give the update to you from the consultant.
But wouldn't it make more sense to put the money towards the positions that are the farthest below?
I mean,
Instead of giving it to everybody?
well, and that's where problem is with the way you have your pay plan set up, you have 5.4% between each pay grade. So to keep everybody's pay grades the same, I need to at least move all the hiring and all the scale the same way. So that way my pay plan is completely, we're not messing up the pay plan. And that's per like our personnel policy. You read it, you like, let's say you got a promotion to a next higher grade, you get 5.4%. So I mean, basically you could do 2.5 and then give other employees that are lower an additional funding if you so choose. But maybe just move the pay plan 2.5% so that we save even 5.4%.
But if you don't do something to equalize it, you do another study in 4 years, the results are going to be exactly the same because those people are still going to be 16% behind.
So right now, most of our positions were about 3% behind. So we had a little bit at 2, some at 3, some at 4, and I think there was like 1 about 5. So that's what Mark and I kind of just looked through everything without messing up our pay plan. You know, because basically my suggestion is if you really wanted to go that route, is next year we do a full pay class study where we look at everybody's job duties, supervisory responsibilities, and create a new pay plan.
You're talking about basically your pay plan has a basically from the lowest person to the highest person.
Yes.
Instead of leveling off, you're actually moving the whole pay plan.
Yes.
So which kind of makes sense.
Yeah. And that just keeps us in scale and follows our policy. But again, this is something to be discussed during the March budget process as well.
We want to come back and discuss this in the March budget.
Yeah.
Meeting with, yeah. Come back to it tomorrow.
Yeah, and most of them that were measured were below. We only had 5 that were, above market.
And again, when you're going out doing the market, like I was saying, but some of the job titles don't exactly match. You know, like Candy, for example, who's here doing the tax collector, her actual title is senior accounting technician, but she's also a tax collector and assistant finance officer in mine. So again, when you just send out a title, sometimes it doesn't quite jive. So this is kind of high level overview of our pay plan. So without getting into the nitty gritty of it.
I just struggle with these kind of things.
And again, Mark and I said too about inflation. We can also kind of look at this as we look at what we think about cost of living adjustment.
But if we raise ours by 2.5%, next year those other 8, look at ours, they raise theirs by another 2.5%. Then the next year we do it again, and now all theirs is 2.5% higher. It's the pay studies which is causing the inflation, not the value of the work being done. But I don't know what the solution is.
What is the least hourly?
So once you do the 2.5%, it would go to $16.30. Lowest, I'll look at that today, of the hourly rate.
Yeah, that's still not much.
No, I think you told me a figure once about what the living wage was.
Yeah, it's probably around 17, give or take. It's either 1668 or 1768.
Yeah. That's,
Pull
I
that out
think we should
somewhere.
definitely be addressing that,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure, just a straight across the board thing. It's gonna be good.
I think what, correct me if I'm wrong, what Heather's trying to talk about is how it's your pay plan's already made the if you do that, it will start leveling off, and then later on, you have to start trying to get that angle again, if that makes sense. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah. And again, I think this is something, if you wanted, as we go through the budget process, if we want to look at what our minimum hourly is for a full-time employees, then we definitely can look at that, to where we look at some of those lower grade employees. So, and Mark and I can work on that through the budget process.
I think we probably should. Are there any other questions, comments, concerns? I believe so. Thank you, Madam Assistant Manager. We appreciate you. And our final item are your comments, Mr. Manager.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Council, just three things. So the Polko Citizen Survey has gone out, and trusting that most of you, or hopefully all of you, got that. So initially went out with the postcard, and we attempted to send it to all of our households. Then it was followed up with a paper copy. And I sent 2 calls out on each of those, or 1 call on each of those things, so a total of 2 calls. And then and people are, we're getting some feedback. People are filling it out. People are, they're doing that. I think we've only had 1 person call. I felt it would have been a better use of money to not done that or done it in a different way. I'll respond to that person by email, and share that with you. But overall, people are getting it and filling it out, and so far a decent response rate. The next phase is that open participation period, which essentially is just another opportunity for our folks to go online and fill it out. So that goes, that starts the 10th, is that open? So I'll do another call with the open participation period, and then we'll post like what some information for the URL for people to go in and do that on our website and on Facebook. And if I have to see how I can structure the call, I can put that information right in there. But basically just telling people, thank you if you filled out either one of those. We have an open participation period. If you haven't done that yet, we please encourage you to do so. So that's the next phase, is the open phase, and that starts February 10th, so this Friday.
The one thing I'm pretty disappointed about is we asked for a comment section, it's not in there. The raw data that people can actually put in there and say anything they want to, we can actually read their statements, it's gone. There's nothing in there, and we asked for that, and we discussed that with them.
Yeah,
And I don't understand why it's not there.
I've not heard that. Okay.
So, there's no comment section. That's what we're going to hear from our citizens, what they think. So that's not even a piece in there that we want.
And we may want to put in the next robocall, put in something, a link, give them a link that if you have additional comments, please go here and leave your comment.
We figure out already half the people have already started filling stuff out without a chance to do a comment section. So, asked about that. I know we discussed that was a big thing with it.
Yeah, I remember that. I'm
So
gonna,
they went on their own stuff, they listened to us, but they decided they was gonna do their own thing. So I'm very disappointed with that.
Well, I am too. Let me, I got the draft of it, a hard copy when we got it done, but if you didn't see it on there, so did you do the online or the hard copy?
Well, look, the hard copy that I got, and it's not on there, and the online is not on there either.
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to remember what question it was for that came up.
Because I remember they talked about if they wanted to process that, it's gonna cost $2,000, we decided no, we
Yeah.
should draw that.
Correct.
We didn't know that, so.
Okay. I'm looking through this last version to see where that was. Yeah, you did ask for that, and I'll get in touch with our contact with Polko and see why that's not in there. Thanks for pointing it out. And I would think before the
open participation period, they can correct that.
I figure people's already done it now, it's, I
Yeah,
can't really,
yeah.
that's you're gonna have, this one, people redo it on the open, and they're just into 2 votes, so
Yeah.
that you can't do that, so.
And I know we were gonna, it should have been in there because we asked for that, but I know another opportunity will be for people to sign up for the digital list. So it'd basically be a list of residents that are signed up that can respond in the future. We can do other surveys other than the full-blown citizen survey that we've sent out now. And that's another opportunity to provide general open-ended feedback. But, well, thanks for, yeah, I thought that was in there. It was like one of the last questions before you got to the demographics section.
I on a piece of paper.
Right. Thank you. Next thing was street resurfacing projects. The bid packets have gone out. Bids are due on Thursday at 2. There'll be a bid opening. If I can get our engineering firm to do the bid tabulation on that in time, I'll have it, I guess we'd add it as an agenda item, if that's okay, for Monday. So hopefully we'll have a good lowest responsible bidder to come back and recommend for you for those 2 streets, Sandpiper and Box Test. But it's Thursday at 2, so I need that to get done, they certified bid tab, and then I can bring a recommendation to you for Monday if we can add that on. So sorry I didn't have it in time.
Yeah, okay.
And then the last thing was, we've got another shred event, and shred and pill drop, the medication turn-in. That's scheduled for April the 15th. That's a Saturday, so it's a couple months off here still. I just want to give you a heads up. Christine was able to get that set up with a contractor to do the shredding. And in the police department, they coordinate the medication or pill drop, pill turn-in. Both of those will be same location as in the past, the south parking lot here. So again, Saturday, April 15th from 9 to noon, which is the same time period. So I know, Mayor, you're planning on coming out?
I'll be here.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Lance and Franklin Walton, everybody else here, so.
Good, good.
I think it's very successful.
So if you can put that in your account, I'll give another reminder on that. We'll do a connect call or a Blackboard call before that goes to let people know, so they appreciate the reminder. Yeah. So that's all I have.
I'll just say that Father Garden dance is this Saturday for you?
Yes.
Is that the
Yeah,
11th?
it's sold out.
Okay, well, Council, if you're ever make it up, stop by that, and it's been a really successful event, 50 years past, well, hopefully y'all were there last year, so.
Was it Doda?
It was Prescott Auto?
Yeah, new location, Prescott.
They're gonna do it all at one time, instead of having 2 dances, 2 nights, they can fit it all at once.
Yeah.
So that'd be nice. Any other business from council?
I'm just looking here at the reports from departments, and a lot of this information from the police department is really interesting, and I'm wondering if we should try to come up with some way of getting that information out to the people, to let them know where police department's built. And we're cracking a lot of good cases, and I'm not sure people know about it.
I know,
Well, the chief had, it's not on the agenda here, so I don't know if maybe he wasn't ready. He was going to do an award for some of the officers involved in working on some of these cases. We were trying to do it for the February meeting, but it
I
didn't.
think it's next week.
Oh, we do have that on there, okay. So I guess that would be added as an item. That gets a little bit more recognition, but
I mean,
yeah,
it's recognition for the officers, but I'm not sure that the public is gonna know.
yeah, I'll ask him. I don't know if he's putting.
I think sometimes they
On
post something at the
Facebook.
end of the month or the first of the month about their, like, what ended the last month on their Facebook page. I haven't paid much attention. It goes into too much detail.
They're doing a lot of good things.
And there's some content on the news always
Yes, it's
advocate, but
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's quick to point out whenever the police make a mistake. Let's point it out when they're doing good things too.
any other business possible? Seeing none, we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, we are adjourned.